We'll pick our teams and go through that. And Ghosty, I'll come to you first on this one. I think Alisson will certainly be in goal, but in your defence, are you going to keep it the same as the defence that kept a clean sheet against Real Madrid, or is there maybe a shout for someone like Kostas Tsimikas to come into one of these games?
No, not for me. I think Liverpool have got to keep it as strong as possible now, and any thoughts of giving fringe players a little run out to see how they do, they've just got to shelve it. It's been a long, hard season. But there's 7 games left, and it's time to really dig deep and go for it, I think. So it's go back and Phillips again for me, and it's Trent and Robertson and obviously Alisson.
And Joe, any changes to that for you, or are you sticking with that same defence as well?
No, I think it has to be that. Like Ghosty says, I think it's too big now for Liverpool to start trying to move things around in defence, and they've got decent breaks now between games. So yeah, I think it's going to be that form.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, Lynch? You look at the fixtures now, and all season it's been once every 2 or 3 days for Liverpool that they seemingly have a game. But I think there's only the West Brom match between now and the end of the season that's midweek. The rest of them will have pretty much a week apart. I suppose it's good news for the first 11, probably not so good news for 1 or 2 of those ahead of this summer. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, you mentioned earlier. They're probably not going to get the opportunities that they might like.
That's it. I think if there was ever a week where, say, maybe Kostas Tsimikas was going to come in at left back, it was maybe for the Aston Villa game, wasn't it, in preparation for, give Robertson a rest ahead of the Real Madrid game. The fact that that didn't happen suggests that we're probably not going to see him, probably not going to see Ben Davies, we're not going to see, any of these sort of fringe players very frequently at all between now and the end of the season. So I think the team for this one and possibly for the remainder of the season probably picks itself.
What are you going to do in midfield, Ghosty? Is there a case for James Milner to play again, his former club, and obviously another game where Liverpool are going to need a load of intensity?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Matt. For those reasons that I would be starting Milner, particularly, as you mentioned there, just a bit more intensity, because Liverpool are going to be knee deep in a fight, aren't they, with Leeds? I mean, every time I see Leeds, it's clearly an instruction from Bielsa. They don't give up anything. There's no lost causes. They'll throw slide tackles in to concede a goal kick to the opposition team. They literally just throw the body in front of everything, and they obviously try and play, and they've got plenty of pace and mobility, but they do enjoy a little bit of a scuffle. So Milner for me is a must almost, which is strange to say, but I'd have him in there, and then Fabinho, probably with Salah is the first name on the sheet these days, isn't he? And then it's a case of who gets that third midfield spot. Curtis Jones obviously injured. Oxlade-Chamberlain, he's only started 3 games all season, so it's probably Wijnaldum leading the chase ahead of Thiago and Keita, isn't it?
Yeah, you asked about Milner. Ghosty carried on about Milner. I think absolutely the same. I think Liverpool will want that physicality, the pressure. It's funny with Milner because I think he reaches this point almost every season in the last few seasons where, people start thinking maybe he's kind of over the hill. Probably isn't the right phrase, but you think, is he starting to be on the way in his Liverpool career, and then he comes back and shows you how useful he is, and the last few games he's done that, and I'd have him in there again, and I'd have Thiago in there, despite everything I've just said about him before. I kind of think it might be the type of game where I just want to see the Thiago that we saw in that Everton game, where he could exploit spaces in behind and try and play balls in behind for Liverpool and try and get, when Liverpool do get the ball back, I think there will be gaps for them to get into. So I'd like to see him playing those forward passes. So I would have him ahead of Wijnaldum and then Fabinho. But I think Klopp would probably go for Wijnaldum.
I think, Joe, a few weeks ago, we'd probably be talking about Naby Keita potentially being good for this one. Very good when he's under pressure and that sort of thing. But you think back to him being hooked against Real Madrid, it sort of seems highly unlikely that he'd be brought back in for this. What do you think the future is for him? I mean, you'd assume that Klopp would want to put him back in the team at some point before the end of this season.
It's difficult for you because just where are you putting him in, and when, and at this stage, I'm sure we will see him again at some point before the end of the season. But at this stage, I just don't know how you return him to the team. I certainly wouldn't be putting him in anytime soon. It'll be really interesting to see what happens next, because I think Klopp, he's the type of player that Klopp has wanted to persevere with. We've seen him drop him into games like he did in Madrid, almost quite randomly at times. And I think he's someone that perhaps trains quite well, and they see something in. But I just wonder whether that was almost a step too far for his Liverpool career, whether he can get that back after what transpired in Madrid in terms of the way he was brought off. I'm really not sure. I think something big needs to happen for him between now and the end of the season, and I just don't really see where he gets the game time. So it's a tricky one, but I certainly wouldn't be putting him in this, because I think it's going to be high intensity. And the one thing that we've seen with Keita, I think, is he just goes missing too often. I think perhaps he is quite good on the ball, but he's just too often on the periphery of games, and you want to see someone in this game who's going to be more involved, who's going to put themselves about a bit, and that's James Milner.
Lynch, is that the same for you? Are you sticking with James Milner again? It sort of seems strange when you think back to all the options that Liverpool have got. We seem to be picking James Milner in our teams.
To be honest, I don't know about this one. I think Fabinho obviously is definitely a starter. Absolutely no doubt about his place. I think Wijnaldum is in similar territory, even though his performances haven't been quite as impressive this part of the year. Certainly. I think there's been a slight drop off, but he's been asked to do an awful lot this season. But I think he'll be on there again, because every time he's available, Jurgen Klopp picks him to start in midfield. So I think the position and the decision is maybe between Thiago and Milner. I think a lot of his thinking maybe around the Real Madrid game, and this is how I see it, is that he didn't want to get in a battle of trying to control the game against Kroos and Modric, because they are so much better at it than anyone else. So he didn't go with Thiago, or this is what I think anyway. He didn't go with Thiago because he didn't want to, try and engage in that type of midfield battle, knowing that Liverpool would lose it. Whereas against Leeds, I think because they've got a similar pressing style and they want to put pressure on the ball all the time, he'll go the other way and think, okay, this is not maybe a game for Milner, who is, the player you want to press and get stuck in. He'll go for Thiago to try and say, okay, well, we can be the team that controls in this game, and maybe Thiago is the one who can offer that because of his quality in possession. So my thinking is that possibly he'll go with that, Thiago, Wijnaldum, Fabinho midfield, and try and sort of, it's got a nice little mix, hasn't it? We've seen it's played well before that midfield as well, and I think also he might not want to ask too much of Milner, because I think he's done that before and given him a hamstring injury by playing him too frequently. So I think he might just pull him out for this one, and think he'd be a really, really handy sub off the bench and give Thiago his game.
Yeah, lots of things to ponder for Jurgen Klopp, and the same can be said in the forward line as well, Gorsty, in terms of which 3 of 4 presumably that you'll pick for this one. Is it a case of Mane or Jota, really? Would you have Salah certainly in there, and probably Firmino as well?
I'm not sure whether I would have Firmino, actually. I think Jota might be the one for this one. I think in Madrid, we can say it with hindsight now, but perhaps going with Firmino over Jota would have been the call, so just to help it stick. A little bit better up top, because Liverpool just kept losing it and it kept coming back. But Jota at the moment is undoubtedly a bigger goal threat, isn't he? He scored twice as many, actually, as Firmino this season. So, for me, it's Mane, Salah and Jota.
I'm going to go with Firmino, Jota on the left, Salah on the right. Joe, what about you? What do you think?
I think I'm going to go with Gorsty and go with Jota instead of Firmino, for very much the same reasons. Again, I thought Firmino would have been the right choice in Madrid, because he would have kept the ball a bit better. And I find Jota, I don't actually like him from the start as much. I much prefer him coming on as a substitute, because he's just got an incredible knack of finding little gaps, perhaps when defenders are tired, or perhaps when Liverpool have really put pressure on the team and it's not quite happened. He seems to come in and find those gaps. But I think in a game like this, where it will be quite end-to-end, he's always looking to go forward, isn't he, Jota? He's always looking to turn with the ball and find space. So I think that could work well if Liverpool can win it back in transitions and move quickly and get it forward. It could work well for Liverpool. So, I would probably go for Jota on this occasion.
And Lynchy, just to finish us off, which way are you going to go? Is it a straight choice for you as well between those two?
Yeah, I think I would probably agree with you and go with Jota over Mane. I was sort of surprised, to be honest, to see Mane starting against Real Madrid. No, he started well in that game, sort of fell away, and his confidence just isn't there. I think the decision there is between Jota and Mane. I think Jota, even though didn't have a great performance as a sub against Real Madrid, which is rare for him. He's usually absolutely brilliant off the bench, isn't he? I think he's maybe earned his spot over Mane, and I think Firmino, you probably need, even though it's not been perfect this season, you need his decision making in the final third in terms of when to give and to drop off and create space for others, to make Jota and Salah as dangerous as they can be. And I also think his pressing and running about will sort of help against Leeds, because they are very sort of physical. So I think, yeah, that's the pick for me, is Jota on the left and then Salah and Firmino, the rest of the front three.
Yeah, I think Firmino could be quite useful just to drop into Leeds' number 6. Calvin Phillips, obviously not the same quality as Tony Kroos or anything like that, but a similar sort of game plan, I think, for me. We'll just go through and give our score predictions before we finish. I think there'll be plenty of goals. Liverpool, hopefully, a lot more clinical than they were midweek, Gorsty. I'm going to go for 3-1 to Liverpool. What do you think?
It's going to be tough. Definitely. It's and as you say, I think there will be goals. There usually is when Leeds is involved. So 3-2, I'll go with Liverpool.
Joe?
I think I'm going to go for 2-2. I think, of the games that Liverpool might drop points, this might be one of them. And I think it would be a good point. I think, obviously Liverpool are desperate to win games, but not losing, I think, away at Leeds would be decent, because then you go into a Newcastle game that you'd quite fancy Liverpool in. Coming out with a decent game. So 2-2. I think there will be goals. I think it will be tough.
A rare draw for Leeds then, Lynchy. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I like 3-1 as well as a scoreline. I'm not backing Liverpool to keep a clean sheet up against Leeds, because I know they will just throw men forward until they do get a goal. But I think there'll be opportunities for Liverpool to score themselves, and I think they'll get a few.
Yeah, certainly. It should be a very, very good game of football on Monday night. That just about brings us to the end of today's podcast, though. We'll be back with the next Blood Red podcast a day later than usual. That will be on Tuesday afternoon, looking back, of course, on Monday night's game at Leeds, but plenty of content before then, of course, in all of the usual places. For now, though, from myself, Matt Addison, from Paul Gorst, Joe Rimmer and David Lynch, until next time here on the Blood Red channel, thank you for watching and listening, and goodbye for now.